Hi, I'm Victoria Legrand, and this is the LSQ podcast.
Hey, it's Jenny LSQ. Thanks so much for joining me for the first episode of a new season of the LSQ podcast. Season 4 begins with one of my dream guests, the wonderful Victoria Legrand from Beach House. Honestly, ever since I started this show back in 2017, I hoped for a chance to really go deep with Victoria, to talk about her early encounters with music and creativity, and how her songwriting practice has evolved over the years since. And we discuss those things and more. Did someone say Phantom of the Opera? In this upcoming conversation. Welcome, Victoria Legrand, to the LSQ podcast. Hi.
Hello, my dear.
It's so good to see you in this, even though it's weird to be looking at my computer, but here we are.
You're such a lovely human being to look at.
Aw, thank you. You too. I'm excited, as I was saying before we started rolling, this is our first chance, although we've had brief one-on-one interviews like at a festival, or I remember a Coachella backstage moment with you when Prince passed away, and we had a little hand-holding moment that was gorgeous. But I've always wanted to get to ask you about, all of the stuff before Beach House, and all of the different kind of exciting creative moments that you've had in your life that have been pivot points for the stuff that you do now creatively. So for starters, when do you first remember feeling like a creative urge?
I think when I was a kid, and I don't even think I knew what was happening. I think just being a kid, and probably like when I was in Paris and my dad was playing records. And, I only remember this because I've seen photographs, because I don't have any memory, but I definitely think that's where it started, him playing rock records. And probably Bowie and just like E.T. soundtrack. I don't even know exactly what was being played, but I think that's where it started, because he was a painter. My mom was in medical school. She had been a model. I think there was a certain element of like glamour and rock and some bohemia. I believe that's where the seed started. But the first moment, probably maybe I was 6 or 7, and I started performing nightly in the kitchen on the farm that we lived in. I did nightly performances of the Phantom of the Opera, dressed in full costume.
Every night?
Every night. So I don't know if that's creativity.
Yeah.
But it's something, and I was always drawing before that. So there was a mixture of drawing and performance and
what was it
animals.
about Phantom of the Opera? Like, how did you experience Phantom of the Opera, and what do you think attracted you to it so much?
I think one of my first loves probably was Zorro, because I was about, I don't know, maybe like 4 years old, 3 or 4, watching it on TV in Paris. It was like every Friday night I would have spaghetti and watch Zorro. And I wasn't allowed to watch Davy Crockett, which came on after Zorro. But I loved The Masked Man. From like a beyond early age. So I think the Phantom was this masked, mysterious creature that I continued to be enamored with in a creative way. I don't, you can't say what children, because they're just in their own psychedelic, natural propulsion. But
you heard the album of the Phantom of the Opera. You didn't see it or anything, did you?
I never saw it. I mean, I saw it, years ago, like as an adult, but I never saw it as a kid. So I never had the like satisfaction of fully realizing the fandom, but not like I wouldn't do the entire Phantom of the Opera, the musical. I did certain numbers, but I would listen to the tape obsessively. And I also listened to Tchaikovsky, and I listened to a lot of classical music, because it was just laying around. It was all cassette tapes, because it was the 80s. So yeah, it was all the 80s stuff, but there was also classical, and there were musicals, and that's where I think a lot of creativity started for me. And I know I didn't make anything, but I think that's where my wheels began.
Yeah, and were you dramatic about it? Yeah.
I mean, I found a photograph 2 days ago that my mother had of me holding a candle, standing in front of an organ with a mask on, a cape, and the hat. and I'm definitely dramatic.
You do come from sort of a musical family, don't you? Or you have musical relatives. Tell me a little about that.
Well, my now deceased, I would say not estranged, but far removed uncle Michelle passed away. I think it was 2 years ago, and that was my father's eldest brother. And he was like a musical beast, but I never had a relationship with him. And my father was musical, and it's in the Legrands genetically, I guess. But that's the only place I can sort of trace it back to is the French side of the family.
How old were you when you left Paris and moved to Philadelphia?
I was 5, and we moved to Baltimore actually.
Oh, okay.
And we lived there for a couple months, and then moved to a farm further north, still in Maryland, and I lived there for about 6 years. And then when I got to middle school age, the best age ever, the worst age ever,
The best worst.
then we moved to Philadelphia. So that's when I went from Paris to the country to the suburbs. So it's like a whole kind of range of places to live. Yeah.
Yeah. Did those moves affect kind of what music and kind of arts stuff you were exposed to, or how you experienced them?
Oh yeah, big time. I mean, everything. Not, music, the surroundings that I was exposed to, from, you know, Paris, which I don't remember exactly. I have all these abstract memories of like staircases and yelling down the stairs and wallpaper with writing all over it. And there's a tininess to that, right? And then the farm, which is this giant natural surrounding that still has a huge impact on me on a daily basis. It's one of my probably like most, it's probably one of my dearest surroundings that I keep close to my heart. And then the suburbs, which was just cruel, cool and cruel, but it all affected, everything affected me, as it does everybody. And obviously when I moved to the suburbs and was a middle schooler, that's when I got more into like cool music,
Right.
not just the weird child music where you're dancing the Phantom of the Opera and Thriller and randomly like Janie's Got a Gun because it's your parents' music laying around, and Guns N' Roses also as a child. But you start to get more into your like Oasis, Hole, R5 music stuff in Philadelphia. You start to get more into like the punk scenes and, modernity and cool kid stuff.
Were there any older kids, or I don't know if you have siblings or anything, but were there other kids or older people who kind of introduced you to music at all, or were you just digging around looking for it?
I feel like I had a tough time keeping or having friends. Like, I feel like I was alone a lot. I feel like even as a kid, I have a brother, but my memories are always like playing alone for long periods of time, and not having like parental supervision either. Like it wasn't the helicopter parenting of today. My parents were good parents, my mother and my stepfather, but they didn't hover over me. So I was always I could like run down to the pond and into the forest and probably be there for like 2 hours. They didn't think anything was going to happen to me. And I don't know if that's irresponsible, but I just remember being alone a lot. And then middle school was the same thing. It's like I had such a hard time. I wasn't popular. I didn't like boys. I like never liked I didn't fit into anything, like the popular girls with their cool sweatshirts and their spandex shorts and their aerobic socks and their perfect hair. It just all didn't make any sense to me. So I kind of was just on like a little weird journey where, I found my own stuff somehow. But I'd have a friend there, here and there, like some weird girl that would take me into her condominium and smoke cigarettes, and like we'd listen to music and do bad things. But
Did music feel, or other things you were consuming, feel like an escape from what sounds like was sometimes you were lonely?
I think that seems to be the common thread. Yes, I think music was and always has been a friend, for sure.
Right.
Like
So obviously you
100%.
were drawn to what in the Phantom of the Opera soundtrack, and you were drawn to Hole and Oasis and stuff, but would you identify that as music that really did push the buttons inside you that the biggest music in your life has pushed? Or what were the artists when you really started to feel yourself connecting with your own musicality? What were the artists that you feel like brought that out? And when did you start to be musical?
If I really force myself to concentrate, which is hard, takes like an immense energy for my brain. It would probably be after high school, probably when I was in college, and I was getting into like electro and like not Bikini Kill, but what was the
La
other
Tigre?
La Tigre, right? So I remember being super super into Oda bedroom dancing, and Yola Tango was in there, and it was like, I guess I was 18, 19 years old, and I was now being exposed to more creative artists, bedroom music. But I didn't think of it like that at the time. I just liked it. I thought, what was this creative, awesome music that I had all these different sounds, and there was lo-fi, and that I found really inspiring. And I had my keyboard, and I've always been a piano player, but I never really wrote anything. I mean, I did write stuff, but I didn't make a big deal about it. I didn't go, I need to finish this. I just doodled. But it was that around then, when those types of bands, hearing it on college radio and stuff like that, that started to make me go, I think I could do this on my own. Like I can do this because I have this Yamaha keyboard right here, and I'm going to write songs, and I'm going to have beats. And I think that's when it really started, where I was like, songwriting. Because it didn't really happen in high school. Being in bands and singing with bands and being asked to sing and being in choir and all that, that's just molding you to like maybe collaborating or being in ensembles and the joy of making sound with other people. But that's different for me than like the moment where you, like you're asking me, the moment where you go, I'm going to do this. I'm going
Yeah.
to try to make a song. I'm going to make some words. And I think I still have some recordings of one of the first things I ever wrote, which was just like this. It was, a keyboard and the drum beat on the keyboard. And I wrote this like stream of consciousness poem. And I remember the feeling after I wrote it. I was like, what the hell just happened?
If I heard that, or someone who's familiar with your music now heard that, does it sound like you? I mean, would we be able to hear sort of what you have collaboratively developed into?
I don't know. I mean, you'd go, oh, that's a younger Victoria.
Right.
And I think the fact that it's a keyboard and a drum beat, and then maybe this stream of consciousness, but I don't know if you would go Beach House, because Beach House is Alex and I, and it's this fusion of our two trajectories, and a lot of like experimenting and textures and, tons of different types of keyboards and guitars, which I wasn't playing guitar, I was just playing keyboard. So I don't know if you would go Beach House, but you would go, oh, there's a mind that is a writer, who's writing, and the lyrics are kind of interesting and abstract. And I can't remember. I think the first line was like, quiet on the West Coast is not the sound I hear inside my head, or something. It was just like a really, but I don't remember the rest. I used to have it memorized.
Once you started doing that, and you got that feeling of, you're like, ooh, I did it, and I think I like this song. Did you become obsessed with it? I mean, did it replace sort of other activities?
I think I did become really excited, and then I started, I think pretty soon after, I was like, okay, I think I want to be with someone else. And so I asked this girlfriend of mine who didn't play any instruments at all. She was just this really interesting, unique girl who wore a bun every day and was into like art history.
Sounds vibey.
And had like a mustache, kind of. And I said, do you want to play a show? And she was like, sure. And I don't remember, because this is so long ago now, but I don't remember if she just tried to like learn something, an instrument really soon. But I think she then asked her friend Lindsay to play the cello. And so we played like a show. It was, I don't know, it was probably 10 minutes long. And probably it was experimental music with me with some stuff. So that was I think from songwriting to wanting to, translate it to an energetic standpoint, I think that was something I felt pretty quickly. And I think that's when it started, because after college, when I went to France, and then I got bored with theater school and just theater in general, that's when it started coming back again, where I was like, I want to do music again, and I want to be with a band again. I want that feeling again.
When you were going to theater school, was it, because it's interesting. It sounds like, we sort of glossed over at this point, you mentioned choir and some other, like, playing piano through all of those years, and then you went to theater school. So clearly you were planning on applying those crafts as potentially a vocation. But it feels to me like you're saying that was a separate thing. That was more like, oh yeah, I could do this. I could be a theater person. I guess I'll do that as my vocation. And that making music is a different energy pocket completely.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
it was, because I thought I was gonna be. There was a point in my life where I was like, I want to be an actor, but I didn't really want to be an actor. It was weird. It was like I thought that's what I wanted, but what I actually liked about acting and theater was the being with other people. And then I loved text. I loved Beckett. There were a lot of playwrights that I loved, and I loved the costumes, and I loved the process, and I got really excited about rehearsals and performances. So it took me a long time. It took me till my senior year or after to realize that I didn't have what it took to be like a glamour shot person. Like I wouldn't fit into something. And it just, I think the wheels of like, you're going to have to figure something out. Like you're going to have to figure something. It's going to be really hard to find this, but you're going to have to make it on your own, because college, costs a lot of money. And then you come out of it, you don't have a job. I wasn't going to get an internship. I needed money. I didn't have any money. So it was like, luckily the theater school, with help from my beautiful mother, costs way less than a year of college. And so she helped me with that. But, I didn't think, the music was this very personal thing. It was like this little thing. And it became, I would go down to the basement in the dorm that I lived in Paris and would play the piano by myself. And that became where I thought, F it. I'm going to just go back to trying to write songs again, because I love this more. And it's still as unclear as becoming an actor, but I just love it more. So I just chose two uncertain paths. I chose the one that I loved more.
Yeah.
They were both going to be risks, but one would have required either moving to Brooklyn or New York or Los Angeles to start a seedy career of being a bag lady on Law and Order. And then the other one was also really weird and involved me going to Baltimore, where this music buddy of mine from college we would start playing music together, continue kind of what we had done in college, and then he would introduce me to Alex within a matter of months, and then literally less than a year later, Beach House began. So when I plunged off the diving board, it started pretty quickly.
Would you say that your songwriting evolved or changed much during that interval of time from between when you started and when you began working with Alex? Like, what were some key kind of discoveries or changes in the way you were approaching it?
I think there was like a rage. If I look back at like the stupid things I wrote, there was like a there was a romantic world, sort of poetic kind of piano musings. And then there was this rage, anger, kind of like Courtney Love meets like electro pop monster character. And and then in between there were like drum beats, and you could probably hear like La Tigre in those, like, there's no real recordings of that college stuff, but well, there are, but they're not official. And when I find them on the internet, I'm like, cease and desist.
Yeah, you're like,
But
get that out of there.
but yeah, so there's a lot of little angles in there. It definitely changed. And I think when it was 2004, I think I was still in that kind of upbeat, like almost dance music, keyboard, guitar, bass, really noisy, kind of thrashy. Like, played a few shows in Baltimore at the beloved Talking Head, like maybe one or two, and they were just these like train wreck things. Everyone was so wasted, and there was a community of like people that liked Baltimore club, and Spank Rock was part of that world, and there were a lot of really cool, interesting people in the dance music electronic thing. So I was mildly on the cusp of this kind of dance world, but then it lasted only a matter of months, just from, fate, destiny, combination.
Yeah.
And Alex's entrance into my life definitely changed me, and the confluence of our other tastes, maybe like less dance stuff and more like old rock, folk, psychedelia, 90s stuff that wasn't, the cooler side of the 90s, where it's more, like spiritualized, or Spaceman 3, the psychedelic version of the 90s, the electronic psychedelic.
My Bloody Valentine kind of.
Yeah, Portishead, all that stuff.
Did you guys talk, like, in the earliest conversations, when I'm guessing that right away there was chemistry works that way, where it's kind of instant and you're like, oh shit, but before you have trust in the chemistry and you're just curious if it's there, did you and Alex like get into kind of what kind of music do we want to make together, or did you just go on instinct?
So the first moment, I remember this, the first moment when Alex and we were in the basement of the row home that I lived in, and we were having a rehearsal, not for Beach House, for the other project that he'd been brought into as a bass player. And we were doing a cover of ELO, and I'm blanking on the title right now, but I began working with Alex on figuring out how to arrange it so that we could do it our way. And that was the moment I was like, this guy is it's so easy to figure this out with him. Like, he's really, he's guiding, and he's not like, it was just a really pleasant experience. And, I would pick things up really easily. And, he had a way of talking about music that I didn't have. Like, even though I studied music most of my life, I'm not a musician's musician. Like, I'll sit down at the piano and let me play you this song. I can read music, but I'm not like a theory nerd, not a theory buff. And he's really good at all of that in music. He's, to me, a musician's musician. Among other things, like, he's really good at production, and he's just, a well-rounded person. And that's when it started. I was like, I can work with this person. And then we just were friends, and we would hang out, and then we would get drunk together, and we had mutual friends, and it was hot, and, we'd go back to his apartment. And then that was when we wrote Saltwater, which was the first song we wrote together. And it was at night. It was probably like 1 a.m. I don't even remember, but he had a 4-track, and I'd never had a 4-track. I had tape players. I had recorded stuff into like those, you do an interview and you press record and play. And like, that's how I had recorded music, even in college. But he had grown up with a 4-track in his childhood. So that's where our two worlds started melting together, because he had organs, like an actual 70s family organ. And I just had my electronic, my old Yamaha from like high school that I brought to college. And I also found the white keyboard that I did the first it's on every album. We always get it on every album, but the first two records have a lot of the white Yamaha. So when we got the white Yamaha, the 4-track, Alex's organs, the acoustic, well, my acoustic guitar that was like House on the Hill, and then his, he started playing electric guitar because we wanted electric guitar. He's a trained bass player. So it's like he started revamping electric guitar just so that we could continue writing. So that's, I know I'm blabbering, but that's sort of how quickly it started happening.
Wow. So like after Saltwater, then yeah, it just sounds like it just started to have momentum where you're just like, we're doing this now. This is all we do.
I think it was Saltwater, and then it was House on the Hill. And they all happened within, like, I lived on one block, and then he lived on the other block behind me and down the street. And he'd like come up the back porch of my apartment, and then, I'd be like playing House on the Hill with 2 keyboards and my one Behringer amp, and then he picked up the acoustic guitar and then started playing the little da 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 da, that arpeggiated thing, and they happened really fast. It just that first album really came together very, very quickly.
And so is the sort of the way that you guys work together nowadays, is it still kind of the same practice or the same methods of combining what maybe you're working on separately? And do you do separate work from each other?
We do, but it's the same. The core is the same, but I can't say it's the same either because I feel like the laboratory is so much bigger. It's crazy. We have so many different types of keyboards and bass pedals and gear and like cool, like we're not like vintage gearheads, by the way. We have a lot of crap. Like we don't have like an incredible collection of like valuable amps. We appreciate all that stuff, but that, when we started making music, we used what was around us. We used what just happened to be there. Literally, that was like a gift from the universe. It's like, I have a 4-track. Oh, there's an organ. Oh, you have this keyboard? I mean, it was literally just sitting there. So the biggest change for me is the amount of like paints and colors and textures, and like the studio's gotten bigger. The metaphorical studio's gotten a lot bigger. So when we write, it is different. Like, we'll still both create things, but when we come together, what has happened feels like currently, we've been working since last year on music, and we were already working on new music before the pandemic started. And the pandemic just kind of was like, well, we were already working, so we're going to keep working. And we're going to keep working, and we don't know when we're going to stop working. But it's just gotten, cinematic is a word that I feel like has been used quite often when people describe our music. And I really believe that I'll never not like that as a description, because that's exactly how I see music. And music I love still to this day makes me feel like I'm inside of something. I'm escaping something, but I'm also dealing with something. I'm in a movie scene. I'm looking in the mirror. I just feel like we definitely have changed. I just don't know exactly how.
So if having access to more colors for the palette is kind of the biggest change, what about it has stayed the most the same? And I guess I ask that as a way of asking about when you're looking for emotional content for the songs. What's that process like? How the work you need to do kind of truly on your own for songs, what does that look like?
One example will be Alex will have written something, like a part of something, right? It's not a fully finished or realized song. It's a part. It's like an arm and the torso or something. And then I'll walk into the room and I'll hear it. Or he'll be like, I want you to hear something. And I'll immediately get a really intense feeling. Like I see something immediately. I see something. I feel something immediately. And then I'll just start making sounds. And that's something that we had from the beginning. Like he would either respond immediately to something coming out of my mouth or my fingers or vice versa. And that is still the same. It's like a magic. It's like something magical happening. And I believe in that there's love, but it's not like just love between us or between, it's like the whole universe around us and all the things we've been reading about the stars and the movies that have been watched and the pain that I've felt from talking to people about their loss. And it's just all kind of goes like sucks down into this one moment of pure reaction. And I've always said that music is very personal to Alex and I, but it's not just like I got my heart broken by this guy or this girl. It's like I got my heart broken by the whole world. Or, you know what I mean? Or all the things I ever heard about somebody's heartbreak. This is now, it's in me somehow. It's like this stain and it's coming out because I hear these tones and these chords and these notes that make me feel like crying or they make me feel like completely euphoric. So that is the thing that hasn't changed, but I think that it's become amplified. And that is why I don't think we're done making records, because if that ever stopped, if that really like innocent reaction where all of the angst and all of the sorrow and beauty didn't just get triggered into something beautiful or something that takes us out of, you know, the news or the car crash or whatever, then we would stop. I always said that, but it's not stopping.
So, so what you're describing involves a lot of trusting instinct and trusting feelings as a starting point. But obviously, you know, you guys are very detail oriented about the music that you put out there as well. It must have been a developing process to figure out where the editing to do afterward without over editing, or like how to know when you're getting too far away from the feeling versus, you know, not doing enough edit or whatever. Is that something that you've adapted, you know, over the course of Beach House's catalog, doing more or less editing on the original feeling?
100%. I think that is like in all artist trajectories, like sculptors, painters, singers, musicians, ballet dancers, the longer you do something, the more deft you become, hopefully, you know, at it. So your language becomes really like subliminal and instinctual, and you know that's not the right sound, or that's not the right volume, or I need this rhythm now. It's not quickening my pulse. And you kind of you feel like what is not working and what is working really suddenly. So I definitely think that has gotten more developed, 100%. And in my own creative process, as what I consider myself, if I sit back and have that perspective, which I don't have often, because I'm really probably stubbornly like an in the moment person. I think day to day. I mean, I think I like plans and stuff, but it's just the way I've always been. It's like day to day. Yeah. So I think I'm like the editor, you know, like I from the second we start working on a body of music, and I don't know how large it'll grow or how small it'll be or how, you know, how expansive it'll be. I've always had visualizations with everything, and I see things like almost like a movie director or something, and down to the album art. So that's something I always goes hand in hand. So I take everything into consideration all at once, constantly, even working on songs. I just see all of these like filaments and their connections, and I really like being almost like the stylist or editor, or I don't know what it is, like the painter of the story.
Do you have any like visual method, like, or do you make note cards, or do you take down lots of notes or jot down phrase, or what's sort of the method of visualizing and keeping track of what your goals are?
So when working on music, songs, anything, if there's paper around, it's just written all over. I have journals that are look like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. Like just it's like there's like equations, and I'm just joking, but they're packed. They're full of like loose paper and like giant messy hamburgers. So yeah, there's lots of writing that goes on, and then Alex helps me a lot too, because that's the point of partnerships. Like if I'm lost, he's helping me. If he's lost, I'm helping him. So, we've been probably like writing more together too on like lyrics and stuff. Like it's only natural. Especially during a time where you're just two people and you see each other the most of any human being on earth. But yeah, so there's a lot of writing, a lot of I'll do drawings. I'll do drawings of things I see, like, if I see some character, they might appear in a set design at some point. I'll think about that stuff too. So like in writing songs, I'll have like light ideas, but just abstractly. I mean, Alex has light ideas too. I just sort of start the like.
How early in a process, like an album process, do you start to see that stuff pretty clearly? And like for this, whatever is in the works now, can you already kind of see what's down what it'll look like, or the kinds of things you're describing?
It only takes like one or two songs for that to happen, especially if there's like a magic inside of it. And so, not all songs do that, because not all songs tell different stories, and by story I mean they have like different size arcs. Like some songs will be like more, and I'm not talking about stuff we're working on now, I'm just in all of our songwriting. Some songs would feel a little bit more one-dimensional, and other songs will feel, if you compare something from maybe the first or second album to maybe Bloom or Seven, like there's a scope of size, of story, of place you enter, of world you enter, of your environment while you're listening to the song. And so yeah, if a song in my mind reaches a certain size of world, then I start immediately seeing stuff. So
are you listening to music much when you're, are you a big consumer of music, or do you have to sort of reserve that, opening that portal for, because it sounds like you can feel music pretty intensely, and maybe you can't have it on all the time.
I can't have it on all the time. I was just talking about this the other night with my stepfather, actually, because he was feeling bad about not being able to listen to music for more than 45 minutes to an hour. And I said, if you're listening to an album, it's okay to not listen to music for 6 to 8 hours. Like, who's expecting you to do that? Streaming is great because you can find all these new artists, and you can find, now it's getting better, you can find more harder to find artists, but there's still a lot that it doesn't have. But by no means do I believe that I just want to have music all the time. It's not like an appliance, I don't want it on all the time. But when I'm not in the album like realm where I'm completely inside of it with Alex, and we're grabbing onto this and grabbing onto that and fixing this and making this better, I'm not listening to as much. But when I'm not in that cycle, like when I've gotten home from tour and there's about a couple months of a break where I'm just doing my, my private studio where I'm dealing with clothes and dreaming about painting and all that, I'll listen to lots of music, and it'll just be constant. And it's almost like it's going into my brain. It's feeding my brain. It's stimulating me in really abstract ways. I'm almost like storing up ideas, but not intentionally going, I'm storing it up. It's just like feeding my creativity. It's like a sponge. And when I'm writing on a song, I don't really listen to a lot. But I've gotten better at that, though. I'm able to just listen to anything at any point, and it doesn't piss me off or distract me from what Beach House is working on, because I don't want to become narrow-minded as as I get older. I want to be open to what's going on, even if it's crazy and I don't agree with it. music, you know what I mean? Like musically, if I don't get it, I still want to listen to it because I still want to understand how music is evolving, you know? And there's a lot of cool stuff happening. You know, like I really like Miguel's new song, Funeral. I thought that was a really fun, you know, there's a lot of popular stuff that is good. And it's always been the same. There's always crappy, annoying music, and there's always great stuff, and it's never going to change. So
Yeah, I always, I feel like now more, if you come from sort of the indie world or whatever, there's always been a pressure to be versed in, familiar with, vaguely familiar at least, with everything that everyone's talking about. And then during the streaming era, that's translated to anyone who claims to be serious about music. You have to be like, yeah, I've listened to the new, all the pop albums, all the Tastemaker albums, all the, which is unrealistic to ask of people, unless your job is to be, you're writing for Stereo Gum or something and you have to listen to everything. I mean, I listen to way less music than one might imagine, given how much music I have to interact with when I'm choosing what to play and putting on an album. Similarly to watching Seinfeld reruns, and just taking comfort from it's like I will listen to the same album 100 times in a year if I really loved it, to the exclusion of other stuff. It's like I just want to hear it becomes like a mantra, like the songs become like a mantra, and I'm just like, I need to just listen to that again until I one day reach a point where I'm like, okay, I'm saturated in it, I need to move on. But
yeah, there, that relationship with songs you love, I also feel similarly. I don't. It's like not like an athletic event. I'm not like, hey, I know about this and this and this. It's like I kind of just know about what I know and what I like, and every once in a while I check out new artists and I'm like, that's cool, or I don't like that. It's not a competition for me. I'm not trying to prove to anybody that I'm some kind of, you know what I mean? It's so, in my Spotify, I have my liked songs, and I'll honestly listen to those like over and over and over again. And I love them and I cherish them, and then I share them with other people, and and so it's not that complicated. It's not a big deal. It's like, who am I trying to impress? It's like,
yeah, no, it's like I've sort of accepted that I can love an album that I've only listened to once, and also love an album I've listened to 100 times, but it's not the same. It's not the same thing. Like I don't need to listen to an album 100 times to be like, yeah, I loved it. I loved the new Taylor Swift album. I loved it. But I listened to it 1.5 times, and I don't feel called to it the way that I feel called to, the Run the Jewels, just limiting myself to this, the Run the Jewels album or the Tame Impala album, where I'm just like, it ended, let's start it again. And I feel that's like, to me, the ultimate is when you're just like, nope, I just need to hear that album again.
Isn't that amazing? I find that amazing that there are albums that make one want to put them on over and over again. And then there are albums that you don't want to do that to. And it's not like, it's just, I know that sounds like a stoned realization, like, okay, Victoria, what are you talking about? But it's true. It's like, they're just albums that every individual person has these relationships with them. And I definitely there's a few in this household that are just played all the time. And it's not because they're like influencing our next record. It's because they make life better. They make daily life more beautiful. They make nighttime feel beautiful. They make eating breakfast alone feel beautiful. They make trying not to think about mortality a little bit more graceful. That's the power of music, is that for every single person, it's different. And it doesn't have to be one particular thing. And not everybody has to like the same stuff. And definitely people don't have to like Beach House, because I know a lot of people don't. And it's fine, because that's not why we got into it. We got into it because we enjoyed making music together. And it just happened. And then we made these little songs that we loved. And then that's it. And I just feel like we've been really lucky. And I'd say that all the time, but it's just a lucky thing to find another person that can make your dreams come true. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and also to find someone when you're relatively early in in working with collaborators, and then it's sort of just like, well, why, like, now you know what it is, what a good collaborator is. It's like if you reach a point where you don't feel like Beach House has new stuff to say right now, or you guys want to pause from it and do separate endeavors, like, you know what, sort of like listening to the same album you love every day. For me, to go back to that point, it sets a baseline. It's like no matter if I listen to it often enough in enough different situations, I know what good music feels like to me. And so wherever I go, I'm just like, it didn't feel the same as listening to Blood on the Tracks, though.
Have you noticed to being more sensitive this year, like the last 6 months to music? Because I noticed something that happened in April. Specifically, it was about April or May. And I'd have dinner and then I'd put on a record and I would just cry. I would just like be so sensitive to music in a way that it hadn't been. I mean, I've always been sensitive, but this was different. This was because I hadn't seen anybody and been anywhere. And it started becoming everything. It was the moment. It was the movie to watch. It was the place to go. It was the place to travel to. And I just noticed that feeling. Did you experience anything like that this year? Like just you'd hear your song that you love, but it just made you feel almost too much or something.
I mean, I feel like everything has felt like almost too much since March. But I don't know. I actually think maybe kind of the opposite, just that like listening to the albums that have always made me feel sad but better or something. It's like a grounding thing. It's like a smell or like olfactory kind of vibe where it's like if I listen to an album I've listened to 100 times, it reminds me that nothing changes while everything changes, you know?
That's you just said it. You just said it. The thing I've been probably trying to say for 15 years, which is the olfactory and what you just said, all those words, that is everything to me. That combined with longing, you know, and in the sense of loss, which I think there are two creative forces that have not, I think that have been in me since a kid to now, you know, and I think everybody has different varying degrees of that. But longing and loss, there's something about those two in life, and music in that. It's the blanket and the liquid of all the question marks, because they're not answering you. It's not an answer. You know, when you like feel something and you go, I want to hear the song now. It's not answering you, right? Or it's like it's helping you somehow. And so, longing and loss have both spurned me towards something, but also they keep the cycle of it, you know, and everything in between, the pain and the beauty in between all that is what is tied to art, all art and music for me. I don't know. That song Lorelei by Cocteau Twins is to me a really good example of it immediately hits me and it feels like my youth and my present and my unknown future, but it lies heavily. It's like it does this thing with time, and I think the longing and loss thing is it's also tied to a time. It's like a time warp where you're longing for something, you're longing for a feeling, you don't know what it is, but you remember having it when you heard something, and then you go back to it, but you never get it, so it keeps you going back and back and back and back and back. And I think maybe that's why I keep going back to those songs that we keep going back to those songs that we love, and why those songs keep us alive, because they never stop reminding us that even though there is mortality and we don't have everything forever, those moments somehow seem to just keep, they always happen. And I think that's why I feel lucky that music is part of my life, because and part of all of our lives, because it seems to just, it's like hope. It's like every time somebody puts something out, it doesn't matter what it is, it's like somebody made something, and they want to just, and if you don't see it as just like, oh, they just can't get enough of themselves, they just always need to be putting out a record. But it's not, if you see, really give them the benefit of the doubt, it's because they had something and they thought that maybe somebody else would relate to it. So it's this human connection thing, which I think that's all we live for, that, right?
No, it's crazy that you could get something that's as precious as like a song I would listen to like 1,000 times, that it, like, it's a thing you can be never endingly grateful for. It's just like, man, how would my life be different if, I didn't have blood on the tracks.
Right, right. It's like every time you see, for me, it's some flower, every time I see a peony or some kind of, what's another flower that I'll just see, and I'm always delighted by it. It doesn't even have to be something super special. It's just like growing on the sidewalk, Common daisy, right? The common daisy. But every time you see it, it brings you this delight, So God bless art. God bless it. That and nature are the two things that have kept me going this year.
When you mentioned painting, is that something that you do is that a regular hobby outlet?
I'd like it to become more of one, but I'm more of a appreciator. I mean, it runs in my family. I have my grandma's paintings in my house and my dad's stuff, but I'm very inspired by it. But it could be anybody. And I like to go to the Baltimore Museum of Art every once in a while, and I just walk through, and the Cone collection is like one of those great collections in the world, and I just go through it. And Matisse is an extremely famous painter, well known. It's not going to blow any art dealers' minds me talking about this, but it's just seeing those colors and the innocence of gesture, and it just bathes me, and I love when I learn about a new great artist, not one of the famous people, but just they were alive at the same time as Picasso, but they didn't get Picasso. They didn't become Picasso. They were Schmicasso, but they were as good. That's kind of a Seinfeld, isn't it?
It is.
Well, I like the Schmicassos just as much as the Picassos.
I think Schmicasso is a good note for us to end on.
Yeah. Okay.
I
could go on, and we could get a wine bottle and all that, but I don't think I'm ever. I just ramble. I guess I'm a rambling woman. You bring it out.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you again so much for making my podcast dreams come true. I love her, if you couldn't tell. Thanks again, Victoria Legrand, for that awesome conversation and, for being the best. There's a new episode of LSQ in a few weeks with Fleet Fox's Robin Pecknold. Excited to share that one. And thank you for listening, especially, if you're still listening right now. I appreciate you going the distance. You can reach me with questions and feedback on Twitter @JennyLSQ. I'll talk to you next time.